kind enough to join me this morning, and I appreciate him accepting the invitation to join me. And that's attorney with the Akron Bar Association, Dean Carro. We'll talk a little bit about Law Day coming up in less than a month now on WAKR. But I wanted to bring Dean onto the show to talk about the Supreme Court confirmation with Judge Jackson and what that means to the Supreme Court, how historic this is, and how Dean looks at this. And Dean, thanks for accepting the invitation. Talk about this confirmation and Judge Jackson.
Sure. The confirmation process, Ray, is really a reflection of the checks and balances in the Constitution. And we talked about that in the past. So the president cannot just nominate someone and have that person appointed. Under Article 2, Section 2, that has to be done with the advice and consent of the Senate. So number one, another branch looks at it. Number two, the Senate is different, clearly different from the House. The House is up for election every 2 years, so there's constant turnover. The Senate, on the other hand, only 1/3 of the Senate is up for election every 2 years. And again, they serve 6-year terms. So it tends to be more of the senior House, in the sense, more of the senior representative body. So having gotten through that, this is her 4th time. She came before the Senate as a district court nominee, a circuit court judge nominee, and a member of the Sentencing Commission. And she did very well in all of those appearances.
Dean, with her confirmation, and certainly you are really a student inside on the constitutional law and such, so you paid attention to these hearings. What stood out to you from Judge Jackson pertaining to her getting finally that confirmation?
What stood out to me, Ray, was that she was rated highly qualified by the American Bar Association, which is their highest ranking. I had certain feelings about how the hearings were conducted, so I consulted non-lawyers, friends of mine, and we all came to a consensus that she was treated pretty harshly and probably inappropriately. But having said that, she did quite well. She maintained her composure. She tried to answer the questions despite constant interruptions. So the impression is that she fared well and she'll do well.
Let me ask you this. Now with her on the Supreme Court moving in, once this becomes official, how does this change the shape of that court? And you mentioned the political game and such now and going on down the line in the future, Dean.
It really doesn't change the makeup because you've got 6 what might be called conservative justices, and she's replacing one of the 3 with Breyer. So it's not going to change the tone of the court. Having said that, though, when people get on the Supreme Court, I think the magnitude of the responsibility can change people. So, for example, Justice Blackmun turned around to become a moderate. Chief Justice Warren, who was a very conservative governor in California, became very liberal, as did Brennan from New Jersey. And so the point of it is you can't predict what they're going to do 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the road because the magnitude of the responsibility, I believe, shapes people differently.
With us this morning from the Akron Bar Association, constitutional law expert Dean Carro with us here on WAKR. Dean, let me ask you this, because you talked a little bit about conservative and certainly on the liberal side. It must be difficult in those roles, whether it be Judge Jackson or any of those judges going forward, to stay out of that political game when we're talking about the highest land of court.
I don't think it's difficult to stay out of the politics because of the collegial nature of the Supreme Court. When they start their sessions, they all shake hands. When they discuss in chambers, everybody gets their opportunity to discuss the point. And so what they're really focusing on is what were the arguments in the briefs and what were the arguments made in oral argument. So it tends to be very objective in terms of the positions advocated by the attorneys before them.
Landmark decision, though, right, for Judge Jackson, now the first black woman on the Supreme Court.
Well, Ray, if you think about it, for the almost 200-year history of the Supreme Court, all the people sitting on the court were white males, and even more specifically, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant males. So the first non-white person comes in the form of Thurgood Marshall, 1967. But, we've had, 178 years, and very few justices have been anything but white males. So this is really a landmark situation.
Dean, one more question for you. I think Gene wants to step in here from the newsroom for you. Gene, go ahead.
So, Dean, one of the things that bothered me the most about the hearings last week was that some of the senators really took off on Judge Brown because of her background as a public defender, seeming to equate her representing people who were too poor to afford their own lawyers as being something bad. And that really was upsetting to me. I wonder if we could get your take on that.
Sure. We saw two things. We saw public posturing, perhaps for future national elective office runs. But we did see that issue, and that's disturbing. Obviously, under the Sixth Amendment, everybody, regardless of wealth or race or gender, has the right to the assistance of counsel. If they can't afford it, they get appointed counsel. I did that for several decades, and I would take offense at people minimizing our roles, but you have to educate people. That's the bottom line. You can educate people who do not understand.
Dean, thanks for the visit, my friend. Always appreciate you carving out some time for us on WAKR. Before I let you go, let's talk about Law Week, Law Day coming up not too far down the line here on WAKR.
That's right, the first Monday in May, and thank you again for doing that, Ray. The topic is Toward a More Perfect Union, and that refers to the words in the preamble, the preface to the United States Constitution. And the idea is that the Constitution itself was designed to change to meet changing needs of the society. And we've seen that through the amendments to the Constitution. So we'll talk about all that, hopefully, on that May 2nd date.
Dean, let me ask you this. With COVID still hanging around, what are you able to do with Law Week that week with the Akron Bar Association? Are you able to put some gatherings together?
That's my understanding. They're going to try to do that. So we're going to have a meeting this week to see exactly what we're going to be doing.